Get pucked. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Matt, Dave, and Vito here with you today, and we have a special announcement. This episode is going to be brought to you by Cafe Victoria's. Right there, you can see it. We have a sponsor. They're located at 8600 Langelier in St. Leonard, Quebec. Cafe Victoria's is a family-owned resto bar operated by father and son duo Peter and Paolo. Peter's been in the food industry for 50 years, so you can rest assured that you're getting top-quality food every time you visit. They serve some of the best Italian sandwiches in Montreal, hands down. Not hungry? You can always stop by for a tasty coffee or a drink and watch your favorite sport on one of their big screen TVs. They have daily lunch specials Monday through Friday, and everything they have there is delicious and made with love. The atmosphere is fantastic, so when you visit Cafe Victoria's, you don't feel like a customer, you feel like family. We thank them very much for their sponsorship of this episode. Gentlemen, with that out of the way, I'd like to ask you some questions. Number one, Nick Suzuki and Caufield are pretty much locked together. They seem to be the unmovables on the first line of the Canadiens. My question is this. Their third musketeer seems to be a rotating door of Anderson and Hoffmans and all kinds of stuff. Who, in your opinion, fits the bill to play on that line with them? It could be someone on the team today. It could be someone in Laval. Or do they actually have to go out and acquire somebody? There is nobody in the organization that fits that need today. Vito, start with you.
Well, today I would be Josh Anderson. He was acquired to Montreal to be that power forward, to create space, to get behind the defense using his speed and using his size. And for the most part, he does that. But at the same time, do I think Josh Anderson is a first line winger? No, I don't. I would see him more as fitting on the second line. So could the Montreal Canadiens go and acquire somebody? Yes, as long as it's another big body person who can create space and maybe has a bit more talent, is a bit more skillful than say Josh Anderson. But right now, today, Josh Anderson is the person that you should live and die on that right side with Suzuki and Caufield. I would keep it at just that, because at the same time, you look at Suzuki and you look at Caufield, they're a little bit smaller guys, but they're very talented in their own right and they have their own skill sets. But I think it should be Josh Anderson. Stop the rotation, let them build their chemistry. They've shown that they can have some chemistry in the past and continue it on that track.
Cool.
All right, that's interesting. I think they have to go outside of the organization. I don't think it's there yet. I think Josh Anderson's fine, but he takes too many. He's too inconsistent. He doesn't work well. I find enough. I don't think he's a top line winger. If you want to have a true, if you consider that your top line, you have to go outside of the organization. I think a guy like Johnny Gaudreau. I spoke about it. I've spoken about it many times, but I think he would look perfect on that wing. I know it's a small line. I know he don't have the size that Josh Anderson has. Whatever, man. I don't care. That's an all-skill line, and that's exactly what the Canadiens have been lacking for a long time. I think that's the answer. Other people can fill in here or there. I've heard I saw someone on Twitter making an extremely detailed case for David Perron, who's a free agent in the offseason. Yep. And has been, I don't know if you saw it, but he's been very nice, saying nice things about Marty St. Louis, maybe hoping to get a sweet deal over here. I don't know what it is, but I don't think he's a first-line player. I mean, don't get me wrong. This guy puts up goals and points like crazy. I just think, he's getting up there. I don't see it going forward. I think that Johnny Gaudreau would be, for me, the guy to fill that void, and I would, blank check to Johnny Gaudreau.
Blank check. So assuming you want to pay $10+ million for Johnny Gaudreau, or you don't, what would you think of the alternative of, provided he doesn't sign with his current team now or re-signs with his current team right now, moving Caufield back to the right and getting somebody like Philip Forsberg and giving him the blank check more or less and putting him on the left?
I mean, that's a possibility too. I obviously wouldn't hate that. I would actually prefer Gaudreau over Forsberg in terms of, if you're giving someone a blank check, give me Johnny Hockey more so than Philip Forsberg. Philip Forsberg, don't get me wrong, amazing player, probably the best player ever traded for Martin Erat. Probably that will go down in history. Probably, you could quote me on that, But I just, there's something there. Look, he's a great player. I just don't see it. I would rather see Johnny Gaudreau.
And listen, I'd be super happy if the Montreal Canadiens got Johnny Gaudreau. The only issue I have is if and when the Montreal Canadiens get to the playoffs and your first line is that small, they might be grinded out. They might get tired. They'll have the skill.
Grinded out last the last Stanley Cup final run that they just went on?
They didn't have Johnny Gaudreau on the right side.
They had Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki. None of them got grinded out. As long
But
as you have players there to support, as long as you have Josh Anderson there it's going to work out. It's going to be fine. I don't believe in that.
Yeah, I think
skill, at the end of the day, skill overtakes it. Now, there's different types of skill. There's soft skill and there's feisty skill. And you look at the guys in Toronto, that's a little bit softer skill. You know what I mean? They play a certain way, whereas they're a team that could get grinded out very, very easily. I don't think the Canadiens play that way. If you look at they're feisty. They're in it a bit more physical, I would say, and more in your face than the guys in Toronto. So I don't see that as much as a concern.
Okay, I mean, I got to agree to a point there. A little quick take here. I would think that a guy like Gaudreau brings so much skill that you can look past the fact that line would be small. I do think Vito's got some points. You get to playoff hockey, they're obviously going to get targeted that line, and they're going to try to be pushed around. But you got such a level of skill there. It's not just a line of like third line, skilled players that are all small and they're going to be completely, snuffed out. These guys, they play fast, they play skillful. To Dave's point, they're feisty. I could see it happening. And I got to agree. I also think that at the end of the day, the organization has to go and find somebody to fit the bill there. I think Josh Anderson's better suited on the second.
If it's not for the free agent route, I would probably look into what would Buffalo, if he's even available, what would Buffalo want for Alex Tuck?
A lot.
Well, I mean, they just gave up.
Lot.
No, they just got him for Jack.
I like the player. The player, but a lot.
Well, they gave up a package to
get it, but he was a full.
You know what I mean? They acquired a package to get
Jack, but he'll always be associated to him. Yeah, I don't see it happening too. Your best hope is hoping his brother works out.
The one thing about like adding one guy to your line that's gonna all of a sudden stop you from being grinded down. I don't see it, man. Like, what's going to stop someone from nailing Nick Suzuki? Oh, man, Josh Anderson's across the ice. I'm not going to hit Nick Suzuki. I'm not going to grind him down. I'm not going to rail on Cole Caufield. I think that's overrated. I think that's a narrative that people who have never probably played professionally or anything, not that I have either, but I just think that's a narrative that's an easy narrative to make when you're looking at a team and you're saying, oh, no, this is the issue. They're small. They're getting grinded down. It's not necessarily just adding Josh Anderson there all of a sudden. Cole Caufield's not.
No, it's not just. But it's not just that. It's the fact that if you look at the Montreal Canadiens roster overall, you could still say they're on the small side. So it's hard for. And I've always been one to say it doesn't matter. If you're small but you play a big game, it's good. But at the same time, when you look at Montreal's roster up front and you're looking at Suzuki, you look at Caufield, Brendan Gallagher, Rem Pitlick, and Jonathan Drouin, and all these players, and they're all on the smaller side. Yes, some of them play a bigger game, but they're on the smaller side. The only real big guys that you have on the wings are Anderson and Armia. So I mean, right there, when you say if you're going to add another smallish forward, and especially to the right side, your left side is small and your right side is small. Your middle is not very big either. I mean, our biggest.
I think it depends the player. How many times has a guy like Gaudreau been hurt in his career?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
But nothing stands out like he's been gone a lot, right? So this guy, and he's been in the league a long time now. So if he was the type of guy that got hurt because he's small, he would have got hurt already because he's small. So you got to factor that into. But it does bring an interesting question when we talk about skill of a player, because another individual on the team is often looked at, and he's polarized. You got a portion of the fan base that says he is a 1C today. You got another that says he can be, and then you got another, in fact, that says he isn't. His ceiling is not a 1C. Is Nick Suzuki a first line center? Dave?
No. And I'm gonna preface it by saying, like, obviously he can develop. Who knows how he's gonna develop, under the right tutelage, whatever. But how he is now and how he's projecting, he's not. If you look, everyone now is talking about, oh man, I hope Nick Suzuki gets to be a point-the-game player. That's not a first-line center in the NHL, man. You go look at you want 100 points, you want 95 points, you want those guys as a first-line center. Nick Suzuki, in a perfect world, and obviously I'm not saying that he won't be the number one center because he's a good,
no, for sure.
Replacement. He's a very good center. So and he can be a number one center for the Montreal Canadiens. I'm just saying, is he the optimal one? I don't think so. I think that if you're going to want to contend, if you're going to want to be a good team, you're going to want to get a guy who could put up some points, a little bit more points, and I think that you're going to get a more well-rounded center for that, and that's why I see Nick Suzuki as a perfect 2. I see him as a perfect 2, and that's that. But obviously, we're still on a small sample size, right? He's at the beginning of his career.
Yep.
It's tough to see. He's had some major inconsistencies, but do you blame that on Deschamps? Do you blame that on being used as the only good center on the offensive center on the team? Like, there's a million factors that play in here, and obviously, unless you're internal and seeing what he's doing, it's hard to project. But based on what I see, on a Stanley Cup winning team, Nick Suzuki for now wouldn't be a number 1C unless you surround and you have a 4 well-balanced line, which is also a possibility. But to me, he's not the ideal number 1C for the Canadiens.
Okay. Vito?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
He's a number 1C.
All right.
But if your expectations of him is to be a Connor McDavid, an Austin Matthews and all that, then you're delusional. He's not going to be that. He never was going to be that. And if all of a sudden he blossomed into that, then Montreal got extremely, extremely lucky on the Pacioretty trade.
But
that being said,
wouldn't it be nice to have a number 1 center in Montreal like that finally?
I would like to. Yes,
years of not having that.
No, we would like to have a number 1C where we don't even have to think about it or even have this kind of question. We just say, okay, plug him in. This is a number 1C. He's a 100-point producer. I get it. But 100-point players don't fall off trees. Even if lately we've been seeing a few more 100-point players here and there in comparison to, a few years back. That being said, yes, he is a 1C. When you look at Nick Suzuki, you have to look at the Patrice Bergerons and the Ryan O'Reillys of the world and those types of guys. And those guys are plugged in on their respective teams as 1Cs. They're not generational talents, but doesn't mean that they're not first-line centers. They are first-line centers. Yeah, in an ideal world, you grab Nick Suzuki, you plug him on the 2C, but you have a generational talent or an elite talent as your 1C. But again, those guys are not everywhere. There's a handful of teams that have a player that's a 1C like that, and we get to talk to them. I mean, heck yeah, okay, you could look at Edmonton, and technically they got 2 of them. If you look at McDavid and Draisaitl. Pittsburgh has Crosby and Malkin, which are obviously in the far back 9 of their careers. And then you can go to Toronto and you have Austin Matthews, John Tavares. Even John Tavares, to me, doesn't fall as somebody who's a generational talent. He's a very good center.
Can he be a Sebastian Aho?
Statistically, can he put up Sebastian Aho numbers? Yes, he can. But Sebastian Aho is more dynamic than Nick Suzuki is.
I'm just going through the teams here, looking at their 1Cs. Granted, this isn't like, because they have Robert Thomas on St. Louis as the 1C and O'Reilly as 2, right? So it depends on the last games that they play. But I'm just quickly going to find comparables here, like.
All this to say,
yeah,
you're not going to find these franchise players or these generational talents that we've been talking about or that we see and hope for.
Only one was traded this year. Earlier on.
Well, yeah, Jack Eichel, and I mean, go see how he's doing so far.
He's doing okay.
He's doing okay.
But with the new team and a new market.
But Jack Eichel, somebody of his talent, shouldn't just be okay. We shouldn't be saying, hey, Jack Eichel's doing okay. Yes, he got neck surgery. Would I have liked to have gotten Jack Eichel to Montreal Canadiens? Yes. But ever since he got with the Vegas Golden Knights have been a tire fire themselves.
Yeah, but you can't look at it that way. Bring it back.
I could look at it whichever way. I could look at it whichever way I want. Because I could also look at it when it comes to Nick Suzuki and say, his last 2 seasons before this one, he finished off the seasons with 41 points each. This year he's on pace for 62 points. So you know what? That's an upward trajectory. He's progressing. He's only 22 years old. Who knows how he's going to be at 24, 25 and under Martin St. Louis' tutelage. But what I'm seeing right now, if you don't look at his plus-minus on a shit team that it was this year, he's going up. He's progressing. Now, will Martin St. Louis want a roster or contribute to creating a roster where the second, third, and fourth lines will be take up more of the defensive responsibilities versus, tell Nick Suzuki and Caufield, here, go drive the offense and just go focus on offense, that's a possibility. And at that point, if you go look at Nick Suzuki's advanced numbers, if you're into that, his defensive game since St. Louis got there has dipped a bit, but his offensive game got better.
So, okay, so hold on a second. Let me ask this then, because I think this is the best way to find both your positions. Nick Suzuki is currently the first-line center on the team. If you were the GM, are you looking to upgrade that position, or do you look to go elsewhere for more upgrades because you're comfortable enough for Nick Suzuki to
upgrade
walk
the two.
first?
I look to upgrade the 2C, and if your plan is to keep Dvorak goes to 3C, plays a defensive role. If he could contribute offensively, great, and he wins the faceoffs and basically becomes, I don't want to say a poor man's Danault, but he'll take on some of the responsibilities that Danault left behind, and then you have your 1 and 2C.
All right.
So look, that's fair. That's fair. I would, especially if you're going to invest in a guy like Gaudreau or someone in the offseason to play alongside Suzuki and Caufield. Sorry for the appearance of Freddie here, my little dog. But anyways, yeah.
Dogs are allowed on the podcast.
If you're going to invest in that, then you address the money elsewhere, right? You put it on into the 2C hole. Because definitely, if we're going to talk about, if you're not getting a 1C, you definitely need a 2C because Christian Dvorak ain't it. And then you got to wonder, is Christian Dvorak making too much money as a 3C? But that's a problem for when the dominoes fall into
In today's NHL, right now, in about a year from now, his salary or his cap hit's going to be nothing. In 2 years from now, you're going to look at especially with what they're projecting. Even if it goes up only another $1 million, you're going to look and you say Dvorak is not so bad as a 4C because as a 3C because the 3Cs are going to start making in and around those numbers. It's 2Cs are going to be probably making or earning just a little bit less than what Suzuki's earning now. You could see that's what's happening.
I see Vito whipped out his crystal ball. He's talking indefinites. He's seen the future.
You don't know how the salary cap's going to trend, right? And the cap, we've seen it. I mean, if you go back 3 years ago, the cap was supposed to be way higher than it is. Obviously, something happened in the world. I don't really know what happened.
COVID and whatnot.
Something happened. And a drop. So anything could happen, right? And you can't take for granted that the cap is just going to go up and that these players are all going to get paid. You got to look at the now and you got to do a little bit of projecting, but you can't do it. So at the end of the day, I'm okay with a line of like Suzuki, Caufield, and another really high profile winger. And then you go and you get a good second line center. I'm okay with spreading the wealth around like that. Just not my ideal situation. I would prefer if Nick Suzuki is your second line center. Now you're talking. Now you're talking about building a contender, obviously.
Ideal, perfect scenario, I think. But to just conclude, you're both comfortable if they work around it with Nick Suzuki staying in the 1C spot. If you got like a Gaudreau on your side and they spread it out.
If he continues trending upwards, right? Again, it's a small sample size, right? Yeah. Again, there's a lot of things that people ignore. Oh, the plus minus because he's on a shit team. Oh, he was inconsistent, but that's because of Deschamps. There's a lot of, there's this, but.
Right.
So if those end up being really just anomalies because of the circumstance, and that's fine. But it's a small sample size, right? I want to see 2 years down the line were those really just situation, or that every year he has like a little.
Well, look. I don't want to. I don't want to say that I want the Montreal Canadiens to model their roster to the way Boston Bruins were when they won the Stanley Cup. But when you looked at that roster, you looked and you had Patrice Bergeron as your 1 or 2, depending, game in, game out, depending on their roles and responsibilities. We also had Krejci there. Krejci helped, insulate or help alleviate certain aspects of the game from Bergeron. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you then also had, as a young prospect or as a young player, you had Tyler Seguin that was there too. So you see where I'm going at with this? You had the depth going forward. So if Montreal can't seem to land because they can't draft, a Connor Bedard next year, or in the past a McDavid or a Matthews and all that, then that's how you can build your middle and then insulate the pieces and add your wingers and whatnot and still have a very talented team. And as they put it, balance out all 4 lines. I still think the glaring need, if you can't land the 2C or 1C or draft it, is they got to figure out what's going to go on in the back end. They need a quarterback, and they need a quarterback now.
Let's not go too far there. Yes, that's obviously probably their number one organizational need, but fair say, boys, fair say. Another interesting point, something that a lot of people are talking about, and rightfully so, because it's a very, very exciting time. Carey Price apparently is expected to play the next game's tomorrow. So tomorrow being Friday. He's supposed to play that game. So he's coming back. There's, I think, 8 games left in the season. realistically, or maybe not realistically, just what is your expectations for Carey Price in the last couple games of this season? Are you looking to see if his mechanics are there? Do you think he's going to go back in like a foot going into an old shoe kind of thing? Or do you think he's going to struggle and nobody should make a big deal out of it because he hasn't played in months and months and months? What is your expectation for him tomorrow? Start with Dave.
I have very low expectations, to be honest. I want to see him be an NHL goaltender. I want his mechanics to look good, but I don't really care about the result because, I mean, if you look at the Canadiens game, I don't know when this episode's going to air, but against Columbus, they were awful, right? And if that's the effort that goes in front of Carey Price and Carey Price loses 4-0, I'm not going to be, oh my God, Carey Price sucks. You know what I mean? Like I have zero expectations in terms of what his performance itself is going to be. What I want to see is a guy who's healthy. Doesn't look like he's struggling. Doesn't look like he's out of it. There's also the mental factor, right? Because, he's had a few things in his life that maybe shouldn't have been public, but have been publicized that are, a little tough. I want to see him rebound and maybe flash that smile, flash that arrogance, flash that mitt. And you know what I mean? Like just give a little bit of that Carey Price flair, a little bit as not, I don't want to say boring as he can be, but as
stoic.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to see a little bit of that attitude at one point between now and the end of the season. And I want to see him, again, just look like an NHL goaltender. If he could prove, doesn't have to prove anything to me, but if I could see that he's still an NHL goaltender and, he doesn't look hurt and he doesn't look like his head is elsewhere, then I'm comfortable. That's exactly what I want to see. The results to me, they could lose every single game that he's there. I don't really care.
All right. Vito. Your hero, your idol, your messiah. What do you expect of him?
On both of your walls, by the way. It's pretty impressive.
Yep.
Unless that's Jeff Hackett. I don't know.
Deservingly so, by the way.
Carey Price deserves to be on my wall. He deserves it. Look, he's carried this team for forever. He deserves it. Anyways, I don't expect them to win. Whether they win or lose, I think Dave's right on that. It's not about the result. I want to just see, can Carey Price's lateral movement, is it still as strong and as good as it's always been? I want to get the first big save out of the way, whether it's a sprawling one, whether it's a side-to-side, one of those that that probably will reassure him mentally that, okay, I could still do this. See how it goes into his butterfly position with his knee, given that it was a knee surgery. And just those types of things. I want to just see that you're going to almost see that the moment he makes that first big save or the moment that he truly tests out his knee, and if it all goes fine and he doesn't get hurt, you're going to almost see the confidence just creep up on him, or you're going to just see his demeanor and his swagger come right back. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that aspect of Carey Price. It's not so much the result or the win, because at this point, what does it matter whether he wins? If anything, it hurts the Montreal Canadiens' chances for better draft odds. But at the same time, will it feel good for them to get the win? Yeah, it would feel good. At the same time, I think I can't do any worse than, brave Montembeault. I feel bad for him at the same time. But I mean, there's one or two bananas in a game that are just like any NHL caliber goalie should get that. And it's no slight towards him. At the end of the day, it's either you're an NHL goalie or you're not. He makes really big saves, but he lets in some blunders. So for me, Carey Price is more consistent. He's still, at the end of the day, does he have to be the best goaltender in the world? No, I wish I hope he is. But at the same time, we're delusional to think that he's 35 years old. He's also in the back nine of his career. Does he still have a few more good years in him? Yeah, I think he's got to still. So I would just want to see that. I want Carey Price to be back with the Montreal Canadiens, next year. Because what's the point? There's no better option out there. So I want to see him just get that confidence back and, like you said, mentally be at that pace and say, okay, Carey's ready for next year.
No, sure. I think it's reasonable to expect that you want him to come back and play a good game. You don't need necessarily playoff Carey Price. I think anybody with those expectations after such a long layoff are going to be very let down. But I think realistically, he comes in, he does a serviceable game. You see his movements. He's not in pain. It'd be nice for him to do a big save, flash the glove, have the crowd chant, Carey, see him with a smile. Like, these things would be nice things to see. Ultimately, my hopes is that, he plays the rest of the games. I don't know what the doctors are going to say. Maybe they want him to do a one-on, one-off thing with Allen, whatever. But let's say he gets Allen's hurt. What am I saying with Montembeault? But But what would be, I think, best, and this is maybe counterintuitive to what most people are thinking, is I would love for him to play and win the rest of the games. I would love for everybody watching him to see that he's back and he's healthy and he's engaged. And that makes the question about what do you do with him in the offseason a little bit more tantalizing. Because if he comes in and he's like, it looks like he's been off and he's got the rust and he doesn't look great, then people are like, okay, well, now is he ever going to get, like, it becomes that narrative. Well, is he done?
There's going to be those question marks. There's going to be rust no matter what. The thing is, I'm hopeful that the fans and even non-Habs fans is that if he does have a rusty game or if he lets in a blunder, they're not going to harp on him expecting Carey
I don't think you're going to see people harping on him.
100% Carey. At the end of the day, the guy didn't play for an entire year.
No, I don't think you're going to see people actually ripping on him. I mean, of course, there's the occasional like nut out there that's going to do it for sure.
I have a couple of buddies of mine that they know how I feel about Carey Price, and they're not the biggest Carey Price fans.
Well, if people want to rib on people just cause, then fine, whatever. But I think anybody with like a rational brain in their head are going to see, like, no matter how he plays, you know, either you're going to be impressed that somebody who's been off for so long played so well, or you're going to be like, okay, that looks like a goalie who hasn't played in a couple months. But either way, I think it's in the best interest of him, the team, and everybody if hopefully he plays really well. You know what I mean? Because it just changes that conversation that we're going to hear for a couple months in the offseason. If he plays and looks great, then it's like, okay, he can come back. Maybe the team could push forward. Maybe the pseudo rebuild on the fly, you keep him on the back. He looks good. It changes it versus, oh man, big question mark, doesn't look good. Who would want him? Who's going to take that contract if you try to trade him? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that cup run, it bought him a few more games than just 10 or whatever, how many games he's going to start here coming. I think that no matter how he performs here, Carey Price is going to get a shot next year. He's not going to get, you know, they're not going to deal him in the offseason. I don't think they're going to,
because they don't want to or they can't.
Both.
Better call him A, better call him B, you know.
I would go more with they don't want to, but both.
Okay.
I mean, look, it depends. It depends. Obviously, if you could find someone to take Carey Price with an amazing deal that you don't have to retain salary, like, you'd be crazy not to deal him. So obviously, like, you're kind of just sniffing out, but I don't think they're ever going to get that. So, and then that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve that, or that's an argument for another day. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't think he's going to get dealt. I think he's going to be a member of this team, and I don't think. Obviously, there's going to be the one or two of the fan base that, you know, percent of the fan base that are going to be antsy about Carey Price, but I don't think that's going to be the storyline in the offseason. I don't think you're going to come into October of next season and be like, man, I'm worried about the goaltending. I think that no matter how Carey Price plays here, I think it's going to be, I think people are going to be willing to give him a little bit longer leash because of what he turned on in that cup run and to show that he's still there. So,
well, Dave, you've said it. GMs in the NHL are probably some of the dumbest GMs in sports. Okay, you've said it countless times already now.
Many times.
I think I could think of about a good 5-6 times already. That being said, Carey Price on one knee is still better than a good portion of the goaltenders that are in the NHL right now that are playing.
That's not wrong, but is it $10.5 million that comes?
No, it's not 10.5. But to say that if he wants to be moved, because that's the thing about Carey Price. Carey Price has to want to move. And has to want to move to whatever team there might be a package for or trade for. So that's two things, right? Because he controls his fate with his no movement clauses and whatever. That also, if you have to factor that in, even if Montreal has to retain some salary, he's still better, and certain teams will require or need a goalie of his caliber, even on one knee.
I think that was true.
That's a bit of
he probably would have been.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't think that, because I don't think they want to deal him. Because tell me Montreal's got a Vanacek, a Georgiev, what the heck's his name? Samsonov, a Samsonov, or any goalie in the pipeline that's literally knocking on the door to be number one, then they might have considered. But there's nobody in Montreal's pipeline.
You hear the rumblings. Oh, they were interested in Samsonov in Washington. You heard those rumblings. So I think that they would be crazy to not even explore the option. I don't think that they want to keep him 100%. I think that any team with this contract and a guy who's 35 years old with the issues that Carey Price has had, and don't forget, and again, I just raved about his cup run, but he was not very good during that season, that regular season, anyways. So he had that cup run, yes, but for the past few years, he hasn't been great either. he hasn't been phenomenal, right? And that cup run will do a lot. And again, to change the mind of dumb GMs for sure. But you got to look at the history and you got to look at the past 5 years. And I'm set to say that there's not much there. Not much there. Don't get me wrong. That's the wrong terms. But there's something there to be worried about. And so if you're Jeff Gordon and if you're Ken Hughes and you come in and you see this roster and you say, man, if I can move that 10.5 million one off the books and get rid of this question mark, quote unquote question mark at goaltending, and maybe shore up with the Samsonov or another goaltender from around the league, I think that has to be something you absolutely take a look at.
Well, I'm not saying they won't look at it. I'm not saying they haven't explored the possibility. But at the same time, I think there's maybe 3 teams in the entire NHL that Carey Price would be willing to lift his no movement clause to go to. And it's anything that's close to home.
Yeah.
It's either Washington, Seattle, or Vancouver. If it's not one of those 3, he ain't going anywhere.
Seattle would surprise the hell out of me, personally.
Well, why?
You said Seattle? Who was the other one?
Seattle, Washington, or Vancouver. Anything that's close to home.
Washington's not close to home.
His wife's home.
No, isn't his wife from Seattle?
Washington, Seattle, if I'm not mistaken, are not very far.
Yeah, but Washington.
No, it's Washington D.C., not Washington West Coast.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah,
I failed geography.
Maybe Edmonton. Maybe Edmonton.
Colorado.
Close enough, something like that. Colorado, close enough. But again, I just don't see how they're going to fit him under the cap, and that means the Canadiens have to take back a whole ton of money on the cap. And is that something you really want?
I don't think they would have to take a whole. I mean, even if they trade Carey Price and they include a contract with term back. If it's like a $5 million contract, then in the end it negates Carey Price. It's like a $5 million cap hit in a sense. You know what I mean?
I understand, but do the Canadiens want that? They want to get saddled with a long-term cap hit of 5.
Well, you have to look at it both ways.
Really want.
I get it.
I get
replace
him.
No, but
He's
I get what
probably
you're
better
saying.
than anything you have to replace him with today.
Yes,
so
and I get
don't
it.
move
But
him.
Montreal, you have to look at it. I saved $5 million or $5.5. I took in $5 million. So it's like, really, how desperately do you need that cap space, and how desperately do you want to argue to get rid of?
I think we're arguing in circles. We're each taking a turn saying why he will be traded, why he won't be traded.
He's not. He's staying with the Montreal Canadiens.
He's
I've already messed up this conversation with Washington. We're
okay.
Fucked,
Okay. Well, you know what, boys? That was good. I appreciate it. It's a nice, healthy debate, even though it sounds like we were mostly saying the same thing, just in circles and in different ways. But ultimately, I think we can agree that we are all very pumped to see him come back and very excited just to hear the Carey chants, and win or lose. It's irrelevant. It's all about how he looks and feels out there. And we're really happy for him on a personal level too, because obviously he overcame quite a lot of stuff. So this is really great news. It's a good, positive story to have in an otherwise pretty miserable season, all in all. But add it to the more recent good stories that have been out there for the Habs in the past couple weeks/months. On that note, that brings us to a close. Thank you very much, as always, gents, and of course to everybody listening. We appreciate you. We love you. Thanks so much. Couple little things just to remind everybody: there is that giveaway. You can check on our social media feed. You'll see all you got to do in order to get into it. The giveaway, of course, is a Habs jersey. Any number you want, any name you want, it's completely customizable. We're not going to saddle you in with anybody you might not like. You get to pick. All you have to do is subscribe to the YouTube channel, and share and get as many people as you can to subscribe as well. Increases your odds. Other than that, this episode again brought to you by Cafe Victoria's. You can check them out once again at 8600 Langelier in St. Leonard, or cafevictorias.ca if you can go online and take a look at what they got going on. We thank them very much as well. Right there, Dave's pointing to it. For those that are watching, you can see it on the side. And that's it. So for Dave and Vito, I'm Matt, and as always, this was Get Pucked.
Peace.
Get Pucked.